Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mamta Saxena, and as of today, I'm still an associate professor, but starting in September, I would be a full professor. So that's a good news from my side. Um, the presentation is basically going to be on things that I have tried in my capstone project, which is the HDV 400 class. And I'm going to give you an introduction to this class, and I'm going to try out various elements that I have tried in one of the assignments, not all. There are several assignments in that class. And one of the assignments that I have chosen for this presentation is a literature review. So some of the things that we can make or we can actually include in our assignments to make it AI resistant. I am not prohibiting AI use at all or not banning it. We are just trying to make it more AI resistant. And the idea is to develop critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, decision making skills, connecting skills, right, iterative writing, and all those things. So that's why we are making them resistant, but not banning them. So here is a very short HDV 400 capstone course. What we do in this course is they have already learned about research methods 1 and 2. So they have a basic information of research methods. They know how to, use various tests and statistical analysis. And what we do is based on their 4 years of majoring in human development, they have to create a prevention program, design a prevention program on a social issue of their choice. And the whole manual is generally around 60 to 80 pages, where there are majorly 3 sections: planning, where they do all the research, literature review, survey, needs assessment, and all those things. Then they create activities, program activities for this prevention program on their social issue, and then they evaluate it. So far, I had been teaching this course since 2016, and people have always worked in pairs. There are 2-week deadlines that are given for each section. Within each section, there are several parts. So I give them 2-week deadline for each one of them. And it's considered to be one of the densest courses that we have in HDV, simply because they have to write a lot, they have to research a lot, and they have to reflect quite a bit. So that's what we do. Now, ever since the AI came in, even before AI, I used to give them a lot of writing resources as part of the syllabus. Academic integrity statements were always there. Now, ever since the AI came in, there was a need to change things, because I realized that students are just copy pasting standard prompts in ChatGPT, and they were not using anything else other than ChatGPT. And they were giving me a very, very generic kind of responses based on these parts. So this was the standard assignment prompt before AI. This is, I believe it was in 2017, and this is from my syllabus exactly. They had to read 12 to 15 peer-reviewed journal articles, and I would ask them, it has to be, peer-reviewed or book chapter in last 15 years. And what they have to write was all about basically, what the issue is, what are some of the variables that influence that issue, and what are some of the programs that have already been developed on that issue, and some of the strengths and weaknesses of these programs. This is, as I said, is just one of the assignments, and it's a 15-point assignment, and they had to write 5 pages on it after reading all these articles. In addition to that, I would give them some other generic, guidelines. Like, for example, it has to be a funnel approach. Make sure that you make proper connections between paragraphs. It should flow well. APA stand, headers and subheaders, transition words, active and third person voice, like the general things that we give with every assignment, and that's expected of them in 400 level. Now, what students would do is, once AI started happening, I believe it was in 2023 that I noticed that students would just put in my standard prompts in AI, and they would just get a response from them, and they would copy paste in their essays as a literature review. And obviously, it didn't result in authentic teaching. It didn't result in iterative development. They couldn't understand what is happening with the research on their topic. And therefore, I had to redesigned some of my assignments in this course, and this is one of them. Of course, there was hallucination, generic writing and academic dishonesty. They were not proper, references or citations, which we all know the issues are. So once AI happened, I said, okay, let me think about how I can make this assignment, specifically this assignment, more AI resistant. And just to make sure that how students, if students are learning and are they making those connections that are needed in this assignment. So the very first element, which I used to earlier do it too. It's not that it was a bad assignment to begin with, but my focus was shifting from detecting AI to focusing on learning. And therefore, I thought if we explain the assignment in writing, um, I, I think the students will learn the relevance of it. And once they learn the relevance of it, and when I say in terms of relevance, I tell them about their future relevance, right? That it will help with grant writing. And grant writing in our field is quite lucrative. Like it pays you well if somebody knows how to write a good grant. It pays very well. And that's what I have started emphasizing, that why it is important to learn how to write good literature review. Why is it important to learn how to get good information from what has already been done by others? So that's something, my students kind of like understand now. And therefore, they understand why it is needed. So what I do is now I get very specific. So you have already seen the standard response, the standard prompt that I used to give in 2017. Now I am giving them way more, specific, prompts, which AI will not be able to, work on sometimes. So, for example, I'm making them want to do review articles. Basically, whatever you're writing in 5 pages, it should be based on 1 to 2 review articles. And I'm telling them what to read in that. So I'm telling them, okay, you need to read the whole article, right? Then 6 to 8 has to be empirical articles. And how do you find empirical articles? What variables and all those things? And I'm recommending that do not read the whole article. I just want you to read the method section, discussion, limitations, and implications. So it kind of like takes off some of the burden on them when you tell them what to read. Ultimately, they are undergrad students and they find reading empirical articles quite difficult. The third thing that I have made it very specific is about 2 to 3 articles on existing prevention programs. And when I tell them these are some of the things they have to read in their prevention programs articles, right? Once again, I don't want them to read the introduction. Doesn't matter if they read the abstract or not. But these are some of the sections where they will get ideas for their. And then, of course, I make them read government reports as well. And then they have to decide the venue of their program, the intervention program. And if the venue is going to be Oswego or Onondaga County or Central New York, or for that matter, even New York, they have to get some local reports from the government. And then I give them, what I want, like 0.5 pages of this, 1.5 pages of this. And what I have noticed over the years is, and obviously the assignment has also improved and evolved over the years, is that when I provide them with structure, right, they basically think about it. They just don't copy paste whatever Chat GPT or Gemini or other or Claude is giving them. It actually encourages critical theory, provides some scaffolding, and I am able to see if their thinking is visible, because now they have to make connections between the first part to the second part to the third part, which is, how factors and negatives and existing programs. And in the last paragraph, when they are writing recommendations for future programs, they're constantly making connections. And this has already been done. Here the problems are, and this is what I'm going to do in my program. So the scaffolding actually occurs, and that is very helpful. Like a lot of my students have said that the way this is done, it has actually helped them start the writing process, because if you don't provide them this kind of scaffolding or small steps, they say we don't know where to begin, and they kind of like face writer's block, and then they go to Chat GPT for that. So a lot of students have given me feedback on it that it works very well for them. Now, before they begin writing, I ask them for an outline as well. And this is mandatory. They cannot submit their literature reviews before they have submitted and I have approved their outline. So I have given them my example, right? This is my topic and this is how I'm going to write. Would be the second level heading. This would be the third level heading. And what I'm doing them is I'm asking them to read their journal articles or book chapters and reports. And when they are creating the outline, they're also writing the citations within that. So I can see in their outline, they have read those articles, or at least they have kind of like accumulated those articles from the library. And I see if these articles are recent, if these articles are not recent, can they look at something else? So this is my chance, once they submit the outline, is to look at where are they on track or not. So the third element that I would suggest is if we can provide some kind of a mid-process checking. And this mid-process checkpoint really helps students, because a lot of students cannot understand that the outline is something, they are basically, it is set in stone. And they only have to write what the header is or what the subheader is, and they do not get distracted. So outline kind of like helps them with these essays. And like, as I said, I have given them the sample that works well from them. So based on the third element, what I see is that because it's a stringent source constraint that I have put in, and I'm asking for claims and evidence, basically in terms of a balanced view, I'm also making them submit in an incremental form, and then I'm checking their outline, and I'm asking for very specific information. For example, if your program is in Oswego, I want you to tell me how many teenagers take drugs in Oswego, right? What does the substance abuse problem looks like in Oswego? And ChatGPT and other AI sources that they use is not very good with it. So it kind of like restrains them from, or restricts them from using AI to some extent. Um, so that's the element 3 so far. Now, when it comes to the element 4 is I allow them to use AI. And this is my do's and don'ts statement from my syllabus about AI. I basically ask them, okay, you can proofread, you can change tone, you can, understand things, you can make concepts map. There are very clear instructions that they cannot start with AI or end with AI, right? Whatever they have written, the AI cannot be the original writer. Then I also talk to them about very specifically that they cannot outsource their thinking. They are only outsourcing their labor. And which basically means once they have written something, AI can polish it, AI can make it more sophisticated, AI can help them with, turning passive voice sentences into active voice, or first person voice into third person. So that's what AI can do. And once they have written it through, once they have gone through AI and they have revised it, they have to actually, with every assignment, including this one, they have to write me a paragraph explaining what AI tool was used, how and where it was utilized, and how did they assess the quality of the content, right? And I believe when they reflect on how they assess the quality of the content, I think that's where we are developing critical thinking skills. Like they're understanding, okay, AI did a good job on this, and AI did not do a good job of it. And this part is actually part of my rubric too, which you will see in a little bit once I show you my rubric as well. So that's my element 5, where I allow them, but I'm allowing them with integrity and accountability, just so that they are not they don't over rely on AI. Then I give them specific prompts for any, and every assignment has specific prompts, how they would be using AI. So once they have used AI, now I'm telling them, okay, these are the specific prompts you can use. So for example, explain grammatical and punctuation errors, list gaps in the writing, what part of the information may confuse the reader and why. What are some additional ways I can improve the structure of the content? So what I've noticed is, once again, they have written everything on their own, yet their metacognitive skills are improving if they are using AI as a tool of iterative writing. And therefore, now we are converting this tool, into an instructional tool rather than being used as a cheating tool. So that's my element 6. Element 7 is a group contract. As you know, these assignments, like as I mentioned, it's a 60 to somewhere around 80. Most on an average, it's an 80-page manual that they create, and therefore every section and within every section, every part of that section is they work it as a group assignment. And if we look at group assignments, I think what happens is that everybody is responsible equally for the submission. Everybody is responsible equally for the reviewing the assignment. Everybody's responsible equally for doing everything in the assignment. And it is possible that some people are, using AI or overusing AI unintentionally, right? And when we use a peer review method, and when we integrate a peer review method in our assignments, and there is a group contract. If you want to see my group contract, I'm happy to show that as well. They kind of like catch each other's mistakes. Okay, this looks like AI written. Let's change this. Let's rephrase this. There is no citation here. There is no reference. We don't have a proper reference, or the reference is incorrect. So it kind of like reinforces accountability. And students have told me about that as well, that one person was responsible for making sure that there is an integrity check going on somewhere. Then the next element, which is the element number 8, it is the rubric. And if this is my rubric for this assignment, and you can see within the rubric, I have AI use. If they have not included the paragraph with details, I do not grade their assignments, because this is something which is very important for me to create accountability, and so that I understand where they use their AI and where they did not, and what AI they use. So this paragraph is actually part of my rubric as well. And I think that's very important, so that they also understand that we have to be transparent about our AI use. So once again, that's another checkpoint that I get. Okay, did they use AI? Did they not use AI? Where did they use AI, and how much? The degree to which they have used it. And I have a whole AI, I'm sure you all have seen that. There used to be a plagiarism checker with a big picture. This is the acceptable use of AI. This is not an acceptable use of AI. And I'm happy to share that too if somebody needs it. So that was my presentation pretty much. And I guess my thing is that why do we need to focus on assignment design and not banning AI? We need to teach our students how to intentionally use AI. That's very, very important, so that they can develop AI portfolio for their resumes. We can also emphasize by making them use AI is that individual oversight is necessary. We are making the process visible. The thinking is visible when they are doing the outline, when they are writing things, they are making thematic connections. And I read each their paragraphs. I make sure that it makes sense. So we are making their thinking visible through this point. And of course, they have to take cognitive ownership. That's what the AI, that's what the whole goal of this assignment is. And of course, assignment specificity also helps with that. Something that I do at the end of the semester, which is not part of just this assignment, but overall, is student presentations. And AI can help with creating PowerPoints, but AI cannot help with what they speak in their presentation. And unless they have done their research, unless they have done a good job of reading all these book chapters and journal articles, and they know their data from their, Central New York or Oswego, they will not be able to give a good presentation, because we ask questions at the end of that presentation. So that's another way of checking how they are doing and are they learning or not. So that was my quick presentation. Are there any questions? Because I wanted to leave some time for questions. So please feel free to ask questions now. And I'm happy to share anything that you need.
Any questions?
Have you tried any of these elements?
We do have a request that you share an example set of instructions, perhaps.
Yeah, I will. I will. Do you want me to email it to you? I can email it to you. If you can write me your email address, I will email it to you.
Jennifer O'Ori, O-L.
Yeah.
O-L-O-R-I.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.